I would like to talk to you about code components for Power Apps Grid. My session will cover the development aspects of the code component, but I think it's interesting also for solution architects or technical consultants because it shows you what you can do with this kind of PCF for Power Apps Grid. So I hope it won't be boring for nobody here. Let's see. So my name is Diana Birkelbach. I'm an MVP from Germany, second time in a row for until now. Let's see what comes. I work for Orbis for 23 years already. Started from the beginning with Microsoft CRM. It was about 20 years ago, and followed with all the steps in the evolution from Microsoft CRM to Dynamics Customer Engagement or Power Platform. I love the possibilities opened up by PCF. That's what I do lately. I write blogs, I have a YouTube channel, and I publish some components on GitHub because I love the way we can interact with the platform. I did a lot of HTML web resources in the past, and right now we can really say we are integrated in the platform, and that's why I love them. So what are Power Apps component anyway? So it's a framework for controls, which we can use to develop Power Apps. In model-driven apps, we can use them inside more canvas apps or custom pages, and even inside Power Pages. It's a product possibilities to use the same framework as the first-party controls from Power Apps. They are generic, so they are reusable, and they have a great interaction with the platform. The structure of the PCF project will include the manifest and the implementation of course, the resources that we need there. I think the manifest, it's actually one of the most important parts because from the design perspective, you tell the platform what you have inside a PCF and how this PCF interacts with the platform. And we have there the properties, which you declare there. We have the resources, including the implementation, but also some images or some CSS or other translation files and stuff like that. And we have also the feature usage, where we can tell the platform that we want to use, for instance, Web API or the context. From the implementation point of view, we are allowed to use the modern front-end development like Node.js, TypeScript, React, and of course we're going to use Fluent UI because that's the same base as the Power Platform itself. So our components will pretty much easily look like the components from the Power Platform. There are two types of PCFs. We have the field PCF, which we can integrate on the forms, and we have the dataset PCF, which we can integrate for a collection of data. A field PCF, you can see it on the right side of the screen, will you can bind it on the form, or you can bind it on the Canvas app or a custom page. And when you implement something like that, in this example, I have the colorful option set, my first PCF where I started, where I just took the color from the customization and showed inside the option set. And when you implement something like that, we're gonna have the init method, the update view, the get outputs and destroy. And we take care a lot about this update view because that's the method that will be called very often. Every time some property gets changed, and here's the place where we actually render the content, what we want to display inside the PCF. And if we want to change a value, then we're gonna call this notify output change callback, which will force the platform to call the get outputs for us. And here's the place where we can provide the new value from the PCF. That was the field PCF. Then we can go on to the dataset PCFs. So as I said, we can use them on model-driven apps or Canvas app and custom pages, and we can bind them to tables, to views, to subgrids, or some collections or custom connectors inside custom pages. But we can choose how we want them to look like. There could be a grid, a map, a calendar control, or maybe a timeline. But when we implement this kind of PCF, we're going to have to take care of a lot of details. And here's an example of the colorful option set as a grid. So we have access to all the standard functionality. When we select a record, we have access to the ribbon buttons for this record. We can implement some paging, and we can implement also the sorting, but we have to take care of every little detail in programming this part. When we select a record, we can also inline edit, but as I said, you have to implement every little detail, and it takes a lot of time. And here's the place where the pipes grid comes into play. The Power Apps grid is a control from Microsoft. It represents the next evolution of the Power Apps read-only grid control, allowing user to view, open, or edit records from views and subgrids. This control will eventually replace all read-only and editable grids in model-driven apps. So we can use it inside model-driven apps and even inside Power Pages for now. We can use a lot of features which are already available inside Power Apps Grid, which, by the way, it's still a preview as far as I know. We have there the infinite scrolling, we have inline editing, we are able to provide the colors, or even more features we can choose to have them inside or not. And I'm very much looking forward for some new features in Wave 1 this year. It's about grouping, it's about nested grids, and also aggregation. So I'm looking forward, what's the way of we can interact with this aggregation? Can we take control of that or not? But it's very promising what we see there. But also very interesting for Power Apps Grid customizer control. It's the way to, it's actually the last parameter in the definition. And so in the customizing, because here's the place where we can bind our own PCF inside this Power Apps Grid. So Power Apps Grid is actually a PCF by himself, and we can bind now our own PCF on top. So we let the Power Apps Grid make the hard work. So they have there the infinite scrolling, they have the sorting, they have the column filter and stuff like that. And we need only to implement a small part. There's the place where we replace how a cell renders or how an editor for a column renders. It's actually a special kind of PCF. And we have here an example from the docs where you can see that the text columns are green, and for the credit limit, if it's under 100,000, we're going to be red, otherwise would be blue. And we can do that using a PCF. The implementation from the doc, it's pretty easy. So you have the manifest. You're going to see this 3 points in each PCF I'll show. You have the manifest, and there is always the same. You have only this one property, which is of type text, and it's bound. From the implementation point of view, we don't take care of the update view as we do for the most of the PCFs. We actually don't render anything there. We just use the init of the PCF, and there we attach our own render to Power Apps Grid. And we do that by fire event, and there we register this customizer control. And the implementation of the customizer control provides a special type for the cell render, which is defined inside some types DS, which are provided in example. And here we can decide for each column type what should be rendered. If we don't do anything, the standard default will be applied. So in this case, the text, it's rendered green. And for the currency, we can decide there which column it's there. So if it's credit limit, we're gonna see how the value is there. And if it's more than 100,000, we're gonna be have them in blue, otherwise in red. So that was the example, the standard. Now, there are a few examples which I want to show you. So in the first demo, I'm going to change the layout of the grid, and I'm going to use this colorful option set, which you already saw on the form and on a complete grid, which I implemented. In this case, I implement only the control for this cell and use it inside the pipes grid. So I have the pipes grid, this colorful option set there, and I also have this smiley column for my is happy column. So if you use the standard, this is the way the pipes grid is looking like. It's a little older, this recording. I think this week actually didn't work at all, but that will get fixed. And if we go to the customizing, we can choose there the customizer control for this pipes grid. And here's the place you can define your own PCF. And you have to provide there the prefix of your PCF. Then there is the namespace and the name of the control. And after we save and publish it, we can switch now to this pipes grid. And you can see that these two columns got replaced with my controls now. And there I can still use this colors. You can see it's rendered pretty fast. You don't see that in the first place there were some other controls there. I'm able to use the metadata. I'm able to use the colors there. I can make inline editing. So on each click, I change the smiley there. And also changing the data. The same happens with the colorful option set on my technology code column. And I'm still able to use the filter from the grid, so the standard ones. Also, I'm able to sort and stuff like that. And the implementation, again, these 3 steps. I have the manifest, where it's always only this property event name, and defining the name of the PCF, but nothing more there. And implementation of the PCF, I don't have much, so it's nothing there except this init method. And there's the place where I take the event name from the parameters. And I use this event to register my custom renderer to the pipes grid. And the implementation, it's also pretty easy. So in this case, for each column type, I have some other render. So for the 2 options, I have the smiley. For the other ones, the control colorful option set, the same in the editor. And I also have some methods there to provide the new value. So I don't use there notify output change as in the other PCFs. I interact with an API for the Power Apps grid, and I'm able to tell the Power Apps grid that my value got changed. So it functions a little different, but I have the same possibilities. The next example would be about calculated columns. So let's imagine that we have here some accounts, and I want for that each account should be visited. That's why I have a column inside the account for the next visit, where I should so the user should visit this account. But disappointments will get sometimes overdue because some appointments are not visited. So I need to recalculate the next appointment. And there's no event which changes there. So something what's today in the future will be soon maybe overdue without any event happening in the environment. So I don't want to use there some reorg jobs. And I'm using there the formula column first. So the first try is to make it on the Dataverse, but this one won't work in offline mode. And here's a place where I can use my control to make this calculation also in offline mode. And since I'm there, I can show the colors for these appointments, and I can say if it's overdue or not. And let's see how it works. So first of all, in the account table, I've defined a new column. This one, it's of type date time. So this next appointment, and that one is a formula column. So if I open that, you can see the formula. So if the scheduled date, it's in the past, I'm gonna recalculate it on the next Monday. Otherwise, I take that scheduled date. That's why that's how I can keep this appointment to actual. And when that's done, I can go inside the pipes grid, and I can see if I change the scheduled date. And after I leave the row so that the data is saved, the row gets refreshed from the Dataverse and I get the next appointment there. But if I go now in offline mode, and I change now the schedule date, there's no calculation for the next appointment. So this one will happen only if I go online. But to avoid that, I can use the pipes grid where I've defined a control 2. And now I'm still in offline mode, but if I change now the scheduled date, the next appointment will be calculated. This time it's calculated inside my pipes grid. And I also have the colors there for the overdue appointments. So now to do that, I go to accounts and register the pipes grid control. And there I have this PCF calculated columns. And the same again in the manifest, it's nothing except its event name and the name of the PCF. And in this case, I also have some CSS, so it's possible to load some CSS using the PCF2 that would work in pipes grid too. From the implementations, the same, only in the init, I need to register my customizer control. And what I do there, I get from the parameters, from the render function, I get the column index, I can get the value of the column, I can get the column name. And now only for this column name, I gonna check if this date is in the past. And if so, I gonna go to the next Monday. Otherwise, I let the date. So I can also show the color there. And here's the styles which I apply. So that was the second use case, the calculated columns. But I can do even more. The next step I wanted to know, is it possible to show related data? Usually in the view or subgrid, you can only show data from lookups or from the table related like lookups, but you cannot show data from one-to-many relationship or many-to-many. As in this case, which I've tried out, I'm showing the related users which are associated to a team. So I have this country view, and for each record, I have many-to-many relationship for the users which are associated. And that's what I'm showing inside this related users column. I'm showing all the users. I do that, of course, with the pipes grid customizer control. So if I change to this table, first, nothing happens. Only if I change to this countries view, I have this column with related users, and here's the place where the fetch happens. So basically inside each record, I grab the data. So I show there for each user the related users. So basically I do here for every row one fetch. I'm still able to use the filter or remove it. From the implementation point of view, so first I have the relationship between the target table and the users. So I have there many-to-many relationship. And I have also a new column inside my target table. It's called related users. It's of type text, but actually it doesn't matter. I will never have some data inside. I just have to take care to import that column inside my view. And as I said, no data there. And if I go now to the table, I go to controls and register the pipes grid control. I'm able there to register my related records rows, PCF, which it's implemented in the same way. I have the manifest only with the event name and nothing special there, except that in the init, I take that customize and control and I provide a cache because I have to take care how many requests I make. So inside the cell, I make for each row one fetch request, and I'm gonna fetch the associated users with this parent. And when I'm done, I'm gonna cache it inside the people cache. And after that, I can loop through the people, so through the users which I've grabbed, and I'm gonna show them right inside the cell. But this one, it's not perfect because for each row I make a fetch, and from the Web API consumption point of view, it's not perfect. I cache them, so there are not so many records, but I still make one record per row. That's why the next step was to try to reduce the count of records, the count of requests I make. And the next example, it's about counting the tasks for each account. So it's another example, but it's the same. You cannot do it with one view. So I use this customizer control to count the task, but this time I don't make one request per row. I try to batch them. And what I do, for instance, first, if the view is already there and I click on the cell and I'm gonna create a new task. So I have a new task now for my account. And when I close that, you can see that it's already counted there. So it's recalculated after the dialog closes, and I can replace that cell. But I think it's even more important to see how these fetches are happening inside. So you can see on the right side these logs, just in case. So the yellow lines will be the one where the requests are happening, at least from the grid perspective. The pink one is where the fetch is actually happening, and the green one where I provide the data from the cache to the cells. And let's see how this works. So first of all, try to refresh this grid. And you could see a lot of yellow rows. That's for each row where a request happens. I have only one fetch request, and then I resolve everything from the cache. And if I scroll down, there are also a lot of more yellow rows, so requests, only one fetch for the next, and then the responses from the cache, the green one. And if I scroll now up and down, I provide the data from the cache, so they are not fetches anymore. So I did 2 requests for get this counter controls, and I have all the data there. It's a little bit tricky. You have to use a little debouncing there, but it's possible. And now my last example, but I'm very happy that I succeeded to make it. It's a drag and drop. Just imagine you have some order or some offer, and you want for each product inside this offer to have its own position. And the user wants to be able to change this order. And it's pretty complicated if you have to reorder something, but you have to change the order number for each rows in between. So I've implemented some drag and drop there. I could make my own PCF, a complete one, but would take much more time. So I've tried to use the Power Apps grid for that. And I can still use there the inline editing. I can make some calculation, the price based on the amount I'm ordering there. It's still much easier to implement with this control. And I have there one column. It's called sort order. It's of type number, where I introduce this number. And using the grid, I just mimic some drag and drop. And while this row is dropped on a cell, I know what I have to do, so I can make web API request and to change the order of all the rows in the between. And just at the end, I need to refresh the grid. And this was a tricky part because I'm not able to do it from inside the cell. I must say that this one seems to be unsupported for now. I had to make some tricks there, which I took from the types from the example, but it's not something that it was an example already. Let's see how it works. So first of all, I'm in an account. And when I go now to sortables, that's my table, I want to be able to reorder this room. So I want the row Berlin to be on place 4. And that's what's happened after I dropped there. Now I have the room New York, and I place it on row 2. And after I'm done, all the rows in the between are reordered. You can see on the counter on the left side that all the lines in between have changed the order number. From an implementation point of view, I have in my table this sort order column, which I took it only for this position number. And of course, I've took it inside the view and I've sorted on this column. And then went to the subgrid, which I've placed on the form, and used the pipes grid. This time I'm using the new customizing experience where I've registered a pipes grid, but I can go there and still provide my customizer control there too. So it's the prefix, it's the namespace and the name of the control. And from the implementation, I have the same. I have the name of the control and the event name in the manifest. In the implementation, also in the init, it's nothing there in the update view still. I'm gonna register this customizer control, but this time it's not a standard cell render, it's a grid customizer. It's something special, took from the types, as I said, seems to be unsupported for now. I have this cell render and I have the possibility to change even the loading, even the header, if I want to, using this way. And there when I have the cell sort order, I'm gonna render this draggable cell. And here's the place where I have the div inside with the content which I need to drag. And on drag start, I'm gonna take that row ID and row index and place it inside the event of data transfer. And the outside part is where I can drag on. So when I drop there, I can read from the event this source, row ID and row index. And there I can call a callback on dropped, which I've provided from the render function. And that's the magic. There I do actually. So since I'm not able to do the reorder here, I'm going to post a message to the form scripting. So that's the trick here. Post a message to the form scripting. So the magic happens inside the form scripting. I have this function, which is registered in on load of my account in my case. So I have a event listener to message. And if I have this special message, which I've registered there, I take the source ID and the target ID, and I gonna make the sort order change. I retrieve all the records for this parent ID. There's the place where I take the parent ID, I filter on that, and I also filter only between the index of the source and the target. I don't need to reorder all of them, and I'm gonna sort on that position. And when I get that responses, I'm gonna go through all the entities there, and I'm gonna make some updates. First of all, I have to decide if I have to increment or decrement that value. It depends if I'm going up or down with the order. And there I decrement or increment. So I make some updates. And after that, I change also the order for the sort ID. And when that's done, I can use form scripting and refresh the grid and also close the progress indicator. So now I have to do on the form scripting too. For the host form, I'm gonna register there the onload. And here's the place where I've registered this function to be called. So that would be from my demo part. There are some restrictions and best practices we should take care of. So we can decide for each control if we want to, so let's say it that way, we can make for each grid some other customizer control. That's possible. We can make it a little bit generic and try to use it for more customized, for more grids. The problem is we cannot pass more parameters. So we only have this one line where we can declare the name of the control. We cannot make something generic and customize it for this use case or not. But we can choose the way we can want to apply it. And from the best practices, we have to take care that we don't change the data, or we don't mutate the data we get from the parameters from the PowerApps grid. We should use the API, which is available there for changing the data. We should never change the metadata. We cannot add columns or stuff like that. The control should be lightweight and fast, because that would be affect the grid performance, of course. And take care that the grid will dispose the customizer control anytime and will create new ones, as you saw in that scrolling example, and take care to dispose the internal state to prevent memory leaks. And also in these calculated examples, it's nice that we can have it on a client side, but we cannot rely on that on server side filtering or sorting. So we are sometimes limited from that point of view.